What's up, fight fans? This is Kurt DeVille with Counterpunch Boxing News, and here is my recap on the Jaime Munguia, Liam Beefy Smith fight. Um, Jaime Munguia, this is what happens when you look for knockouts or you expect a particular fighter to do a certain thing. You know, um, of course, Munguia, he came on the scene by knocking out Saddam Ali, taking his WBO title, and it was bad news it was bad news for Saddam Ali, But remember something, um, Saddam Ali, doesn't really have a good chin. His chin was iffy to begin with. Not saying Munguia can't hit, because the point I'm trying to make is um, Saddam Ali, first of all, didn't see this big guy coming. You know, he didn't know what he had to offer. He was a sleeping giant, like I like to say, because, of course, where did he come from? Tijuana, right? So, and he's also originally a 147 pounder. He took the fight with Miguel Cotto, as his farewell fight, something that was easy. And I think that was like a cherry pick that went bad. And Saddam Ali showed he still has skill despite his upset loss to Jesse Vargas. Okay. So, um, but, and Jesse Vargas had like 10 knockouts or something like that. So yeah, he's another James Kirkland in retrospect. The only difference is James Kirkland's a banger and Saddam Ali wasn't. He was a boxer. But Jaime Munguia, he came in, man. I didn't like the way he got hit like that. I know that's he's a Mexican fighter. Mexican fighters come forward, but he changed trainers, and the trainer was supposed to. He said with his father, all he did was come forward and throw punches, and how this new trainer that he had was supposed to do the opposite. Learning defense and stuff like that. But well, kind of remains to be seen. Like he said, though, he's a little green. Still, he needs a lot to know. He's only 21 years of age. I'm glad he wasn't in there with Gennady Golovkin, and he wasn't qualified to pick that fight or to fight that fight in with Golovkin. I'm glad, because that would have ruined a young guy's career, and I've seen guys' career end like that. David Reed and um, who's the guy that fought Julio Cesar Chavez? Can't remember right now, but yeah, those guys start kind of push their career too fast, and I think this is a good stepping stone fighting Beefy Smith, because remember, Beefy Smith is the same guy that went 9 rounds or almost 9 rounds with Miguel Alvarez. On top of when you get in there and you fight a guy, you learn the experience from that guy. You learn something, and what I liked about Smith was able to counter over that slow jab. Everyone wants to compare Munguia to someone like Julio Cesar Chavez because he goes to the body. Well, a lot of Mexicans go to the body. That's no secret. I like to look at Munguia as a young, unpolished George Foreman. He fights like George. His punches are looping. They're powerful. He'll not. And he throws them. They're rangy. You know, um, and I think he's more like George Foreman. That if I had to compare him to any fighter, forget his ethnicity, his fighting style is like George Foreman. And I just didn't like the way he was getting hit, but it was due to Beefy Smith with the experience. And I think the punching power eventually took its toll on Beefy Smith. Um, Beefy Smith is tougher than a coffin nail, because he took a lot of shots. And he took a lot of shots even before he went down. And I think he went down in the 5th or the 6th round. And, he was able to get back up from that particular knockdown. And I thought it was, the beginning of the end at that point. This fight went 12 rounds. So Beefy Smith showed that he had heart. And this is a nice, healthy step for Munguia. I don't think, everyone was talking about throwing him in there with Triple G and Canelo and stuff like that. I don't think he's ready for that right now. I think he needs to, I don't even think he needs to unify right now, honestly. I know he wants to, but I think they need to get him in there with a couple fights, because if he gets in there with somebody, another big guy like himself, like Jared Hurd, I did a fight study on that, or a kind of a comparison of their keys of victory. If he gets in there and fights a guy like that, or even Charlo, those guys can pop. Okay, those guys have pop to their punches, and I think both of those guys beat him now. Just looking at off this performance, because he got hit too much, and when he did drop Beefy Smith in the 5th or 6th round, you could tell he didn't have the experience to execute and finish. Most of the time when you get someone hurt like that, he was supposed to follow up. So he didn't have a follow up plan. But like he said, he tried. He tried with what the skills he had. I'm not knocking Jaime Munguia. I think he's a great guy. I think he's a very exciting fighter. And that's the thing. He's gonna sell tickets. People are gonna come see him. You had people off their seats, and he's gonna throw punches. And I feel that Beefy, he did a lot of veteran stuff in there, like he is. He's 29 years of age. I just hope he got paid, the right way. He didn't come all the way from Europe to lose. I thought the scorecards were a little off. You know what I mean? Harold Letterman's scorecards, and especially in the 3rd round, I think Beefy Smith won all 3 of those rounds. I got to add that in. That's worth mentioning. Beefy Smith should have went to the body, but if he was throwing and exchanging to the body, that would have given Munguia more opportunities upstairs. So I can see why he kept his defense tight. Okay. And, and he caught Munguia with a lot of shots. And one thing that bothered me about Munguia, someone please tell this guy, close your mouth. The dude's mouth was wide open like this most of the time. I know it's more or less a habit, but that habit can cause you to get your jaw broken. Someone needs to tell him, please, and it might be a problem with, breathing, and, while having the mouthpiece in your mouth. Maybe he needs to invest in a double-way mouthpiece, a two-way mouthpiece, if he has that problem breathing, because he's starting to breathe out of his mouth and he leaves his mouth open. That's the only reasonable explanation for that. You know what I mean? Because he got elbowed, like I think in the 3rd round or the 4th round by Beefy Smith. And Smith, gave him a good elbow and his mouth was wide open. That could have been very bad if it had been more force to that. Munguia does prove he can take a punch. So taking all that punches and the holes in his defense, he can prove that, hey, I can take punches. If he did get in there with someone like Hurd, that would be a war as long as it lasts. But I think Hurd's another tough guy too. So if Hurd thinks Lara hit him the hardest he's ever getting hit, no homo, I would like to see what he thinks about Munguia's punch. I would like to see that fight in the future, because remember, Jared Hurd is not an older guy. He's a young guy too. He just has more experience because he's been around longer, than Jaime Munguia, But I think Jaime needs to take smaller steps, and this was a nice step tonight. But yeah, that it was a very entertaining fight, a great fight. What else? Beefy Smith, he you can tell he's an humble guy. He didn't want to talk bad about Munguia, because they compared him to Canelo, and he was like, hey, this is Munguia's victory. I don't want to talk about him like that. And, but he said he thinks Canelo hits harder. And I don't think Canelo hits harder. I think Canelo has more skill and uses his punching power in the right areas at the right time. His experience is better, therefore his timing is better. So he knew when to hit Beefy Smith after the exchanges. That's why, something Munguia has yet to learn, okay? Canelo already knew. So when Beefy went at Canelo and Canelo was on the ropes, waiting for the rope-a-dope, waiting to catch and shoot, he knew when to throw those punches to the body, because he knew he timed it right when Beefy Smith would throw one or two, because Beefy Smith throws maybe a 1 or 2 punch combination. He never really, throws 4 or 5. maybe every so often, and Canelo timed it. So it's like you have to take in consideration where, Canelo, he just knows when to hit and how to hit. Canelo does punch though, and it does show a lot, but that's just due to skill. Canelo knew how to follow up. Munguia, I don't think he did. I don't think he's quite learned that yet and put that into his repertoire. You know what I mean? So, but he's a very entertaining fighter. He will sell tickets at the end of the day. It was a good fight for him, and he was against a game opponent, and we can't forget that Beefy Smith was the WBO. He was, it was the WBO or the WBA. He was the champ at that weight class at one time. So he's the former champ. So it's like champion versus the next champion. This is how it should have been billed because up until the fight he only had one loss, and that was to Canelo Alvarez, right? So kudos for Smith for hanging out, and showing a tough fight. Munguia, if Beefy could punch, this would be a whole different conversation. But Beefy, he lacks the punching power, but he did punch. I think he kind of bothered Munguia when he went to the body too. So he should have went to the body a lot more, and that's something I'm surprised he didn't do. But we all already talked about why he didn't. Okay, so it was a very entertaining fight. But anyway, that's just me wrapping up the recap of the fight. You guys tell me what you think about this particular fight. Please subscribe, and you guys been counterpunched. Peace.